The moment I stepped into that dealership, my son-in-law pointed at me and shouted, "Get out! You don't belong here." He called security like I was some broke old fool who wandered in by mistake. 5 minutes later, his boss walked out, looked him dead in the eye, and said, "You just insulted the man who bought our most expensive Rolls-Royce. You're fired." That was the day I stopped being their embarrassment and started being their reckoning. But that's not humiliation. It was only the beginning. You haven't heard what came after the applause, stopped what I uncovered, what I lost, and how justice found its way back home. If you're hearing this, hit like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you first heard about my story of revenge. Because trust me, you haven't heard the whole truth yet. My name is John Merrick, and this is the story of how a man they thought was finished became the lesson they'll never forget. I still remember that evening, the way a man remembers the night before a storm, the quiet too heavy, the light too perfect, as if the world itself was holding its breath. It was a Saturday in February, Miami air, still warm from the day. I'd driven my old 2014 Camry up to my daughter's house in Coral Gables, carrying a small paper bag with books for my grandchildren, Charlotte's Web for Sophie, The Secret Garden for Ethan. Simple things, but simple things meant everything to me. When I pulled up, Derek's Porsche Cayenne was already parked diagonally across the driveway, like it was guarding the house. Black paint waxed to blindness, the kind of shine that screams for attention. I parked on the street, careful not to scratch his kingdom. He was outside polishing the car's hood with a microfiber cloth. He didn't even look up when I stepped out. "You're early, John," he said. I smiled politely. Good habit from my old retail days. Hard to quit punctuality. He smirked. "Picked this beauty up yesterday. Cayenne Turbo. Cost more than some houses." I nodded. "Impressive." "How's it drive?" "Smooth," he said, still polishing. "You should try it, if you can afford the insurance." There it was, the jab. He never missed his opening move. I shifted the gift bag in my hand. "Are Lydia and the kids inside?" He jerked his chin toward the front door. "They're in there. But let's keep the Camry on the street. Wouldn't want oil spots on my driveway." The door opened before I could answer. My daughter Lydia appeared, wiping her hands on a kitchen towel. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Dad, you made it." She hugged me quick and light, like a handshake disguised as affection. The smell of roast chicken drifted from inside, warm and familiar, but something else hung under it. A sharp bitterness, the smell of stress. The dining room looked curated, all glass and chrome, modern art on the wall chairs that cared more about style than comfort. I could tell which pieces she picked and which ones he had insisted on. Her touch was missing from half the room. The kids waved from the table. Ethan wore a shirt, too small at the collar. Sophie's jeans stopped short at her ankles. I noticed it immediately. The kind of detail parents overlook, but grandparents don't. We sat down. Derek took the head of the table, of course. Lydia sat across from him between the kids, her movements careful and quiet. So John Derek began pouring himself a glass of wine, without offering me any, still living in that little studio downtown. "Yes," I said evenly. "It suits me fine." He chuckled. "Couldn't do that myself. A man needs space. But then again, you're retired. Downsizing makes sense at your age." Lydia's fork paused halfway to her mouth. "Everyone's situations are different," she said softly. He ignored her. "What was it you used to own? A hardware store?" 7 stores, I corrected. "Sold them in 2023. He smirked. "Right. Must have been quite the windfall. Before rent, taxes, and that fixed income hit." His words floated across the table like poison wrapped in politeness. The kids ate silently. I caught Lydia's eyes, once a flicker of apology, then gone again. Dinner went on like that, a one-man performance about Derek's promotions, his cars, his luxury clients, each word a reminder of his success, each pause an invitation to compare my little life with his grand one. When he bragged about the Porsche's twin-turbo engine, I counted quietly how many times he'd mentioned it, 3. By the 4th, it became almost funny. Halfway through dessert, I tried to change the subject. "Ethan, how's school? Your mom mentioned math's been tricky this year." Before the boy could answer, Derek cut in voice just sharp enough. "We've got it covered, John. We don't need handouts. I wasn't offering a handout, just help." Same thing he said, setting his glass down hard enough for it to ring. "We don't need charity from someone living in a one-room apartment." The room went quiet. Lydia's face turned to stone. Sophie looked at her plate. Ethan's eyes darted between us, wide, confused. 3 times that night, Lydia could have spoken up. She didn't. Silence is its own kind of surrender. After dinner, I asked if I could see the kids' rooms. Ethan's shoes had holes in the soles. Sophie's desk drawer was held together with tape. But in the master bedroom, I glimpsed a king-size bed, white linens, price tags, still dangling $800, luxury unused, a symbol of what mattered to Derek. When I came back down, Sophie whispered, "Grandpa, do you like Dad's car?" "It's nice," I said. "How's school?" "Fine. Daddy says we might get new shoes next month after the car payment." Her words cut cleaner than anything Derek had said all night. I thanked Lydia for dinner. Derek walked me to the door, not out of courtesy, but control. "Next time call first," he said. "We're busy people." "Of course," I replied. Outside, I saw his arm slide around Lydia's waist through the window. She leaned into it. Not affection, just exhaustion. The drive home was quiet. 25 minutes through Miami traffic. My studio apartment greeted me with the stillness I'd come to appreciate. One armchair, one desk, one bed, everything in order. I made tea, opened my laptop, and logged into my bank app. The numbers blinked back, 2360 47 321.84. I closed the screen gently. On the wall above my desk hung an old photograph, Merrick Hardware, grand opening 1986. I was 30, standing beside the sign I'd built with my own hands. My father's watch glinted on my wrist. I had built something, real, honest, brick by brick. Now my daughter lived in a glass house, built by a man who mistook arrogance for success. I didn't feel anger, not yet, just clarity. Derek believed I was finished, irrelevant, powerless. That was his mistake. I opened a new document and typed the title, Family Observation, March 20, 2025. Then, I sat back, the hum of the city outside my window, the weight of purpose settling in my chest. This time, I wouldn't raise my voice. I would let the facts speak. It started quietly, the way most storms do. No shouting, no confrontation, just me, my coffee, and a spreadsheet. Every morning for a week after that dinner, I woke before sunrise, brewed a cup, and sat by the window overlooking Kendall's narrow streets. The world felt cleaner at that hour. Less noise, fewer lies. I'd spent 40 years running hardware store. I knew how to spot cracks before a wall collapsed. Derek Hale might have thought I was blind, but he'd built his castle on debt, not concrete. I opened a new Excel sheet, labeled it Household Behavior Patterns, every row a clue. Porsche purchased mid-February. New luxury linens, $800. Children's clothes worn out. Credit card payments inconsistent. I wasn't being emotional. I was being methodical. Emotion is how men like Derek win. They make you angry. And when you're angry, you stop being smart. By the third morning, I decided observation wasn't enough. I needed eyes beyond mine. That's how Ray Mendez entered my story. I found him online. Former Miami-Dade police private investigator for 18 years. His reviews spoke of efficiency, not sympathy. That appealed to me. I didn't need comfort. I needed evidence. We met at a cafe in Coconut Grove, the kind of place where retirees read newspapers and nobody looks twice at a man with a folder. He arrived on time, gray. At the temples, a faint scar along his jaw. The kind of man who'd seen things and stopped trying to explain them. "Mr. Merrick," he said, voice gravelly. "You said this was family-related." "Yes. My son-in-law. Something's wrong with his finances and maybe his faithfulness." Ray nodded once, didn't blink. "You want proof, not suspicion." "Exactly." He pulled a small notebook from his jacket. Names, addresses, his workplace: Prestige Motors, Coral Gables. Sales manager. I slid the paper across the table. His schedule, vehicle plate, usual restaurants, all there. He glanced over it, impressed. "You were in business, weren't you?" 40 years, I said. "I know how to track inventory." He smiled faintly. "Then you'll understand my rate. 2 weeks, full surveillance, background check. $3,500, half up front." I took an envelope from my coat. $2,000, cash. We shook hands. "You'll hear from me in 48 hours. When he left, I sat a while longer staring at the empty cup. I didn't feel like a man plotting revenge. I felt like a man about to audit a failing branch of his own family. That evening, I ran into Helen Carter, my neighbor across the hall. She was carrying groceries, struggling with the bags. I helped her without thinking. "You look tired, John," she said once the bags were down. "Not sleeping, just thinking," I said. "About your daughter." She'd met Lydia once years ago. Helen was sharp, a retired literature teacher, with the kind of intuition age gives you. I hesitated. "About her husband." Helen leaned against her doorframe. "You're planning something. I can see it in your shoulders." I smiled. "You ever seen a man humiliated by his own son-in-law in front of his grandkids?" "I've seen worse," she said softly. "But I've also seen good men lose themselves trying to make it right." "Noted," I replied. She sighed. "Just remember, revenge doesn't always end where you expect. Sometimes it takes a piece of you too." I nodded, but inside, I thought, I'm not after revenge. I'm after balance. 2 days later, Ray texted, "Target active. Routine established." Every day after that, short updates came through. No names, no details, just breadcrumbs. Lunch meeting at Zuma. Woman present. Hotel parking garage. Same car. Same woman. ATM withdrawal. Coral Gables branch. Each line added weight to the truth I already suspected. Meanwhile, I kept my own routine. Grocery shopping Tuesdays, library Thursdays, evening walks at 6. If anyone was watching me, they'd see a harmless old man living his quiet life. That's how I wanted it. One night around 10, my phone buzzed again. This time, not a text, a call. "Mr. Merrick, Ray said you'll want to see this in person. Tomorrow, noon. Coconut Grove again." His tone had changed. "What did you find?" He paused. "Let's just say your instincts were generous. Bring a calm head." That night I couldn't sleep. I made tea and sat by the window, Miami lights, flickering like dying stars. I thought about Lydia, how she used to debate philosophy over breakfast with me when she was 20, how she promised she'd never marry for money. Now she was living inside a luxury prison, guarded by a man who used status as a leash. Somewhere around 3 a.m., the refrigerator hummed, and I realized something. I wasn't angry anymore. I was ready. At noon, I found Ray waiting at the cafe. He slid a folder across the table, thicker than I expected. Photos, time-stamped. Derek and a woman younger, early 30s. Professional clothes. Different locations: a restaurant in Brick Hill, the parking lot of a hotel, the lobby of another. In one picture, His hand rested on her lower back. In another, he leaned across the table smiling, in a way I hadn't seen him smile with my daughter in years. Ray's voice was matter-of-fact. Her name's Vanessa Torres, sales associate at the same dealership. Based on my observations, it's been going on 8, maybe 9 months. I stared at the photos without blinking. You're certain enough for court, he said. He opened a second envelope. Financials. He's deep in debt. 2 personal loans about 60 grand. Credit cards maxed. I estimate total family liability around 300,000, not including the mortgage. He waited, maybe expecting anger. What he got was calculation. Does my daughter know? No. Nothing in joint accounts. Then, he's either hiding income or drowning, both, Ray said. Men like him live above their pay grade until the ceiling caves in. I paid the remaining balance, added a generous tip, and stood. Thank you, Mr. Mendez. You want me to keep following him? No, I said. You've done enough. The rest is my department. Back home, I spread the photos on my desk, each one a piece of evidence, each one a reason. Across the room, Helen's voice echoed in my mind. Revenge takes a piece of you too. Maybe. But sometimes I thought it's the only way to remind someone you're still whole. I opened my laptop again, started a new entry in my file. Observation log 4. Subject confirmed adulterous behavior. Estimated debt ratio exceeds sustainable income. Next phase verification via public exposure opportunity. I leaned back in the chair, the glow of the screen reflecting in the photo of my old hardware store on the wall. I'd built that business by understanding people, suppliers, customers, employees. Everyone had a weakness, a pressure point. Derek Hale's was simple pride, and I was about to press right where it hurt. I spent the next morning sorting through Ray's folder, like a man rebuilding a crime scene. Every photograph, every receipt, every timestamp laid out across my desk, in perfect alignment. I didn't look at them as a father. I looked at them as an analyst. 40 years of business had trained me to separate data from emotion, and that's what I needed now. Numbers, facts, proof. But it's hard to keep your heart out of it when your daughter's life is the data set. In one photo, Derek and that woman, Vanessa Torres, sat on the patio of a Brickell restaurant, sunlight slanting across their wine glasses. His hand brushed her wrist. In another, they stood by the valet stand of a hotel, close enough that strangers might have assumed they were married. They looked easy together, like he'd forgotten what shame felt like. I slid the photos back into the envelope and opened my laptop again. On a clean sheet of paper beside it, I started writing what I called the map. It wasn't a plan yet, just lines connecting names, accounts, motives. At the top, Derek Hale. Beneath it, affair, 9 months, debts, 300K, faults, personality driver, narcissism, disguised as success. Under that, Lydia, my daughter, connected to him by 2 lines, financial dependence and emotional suppression. Underneath, both 2 smaller names, written in blue ink, Ethan and Sophie. The only innocence in this entire network. It wasn't rage that moved my pen. It was purpose. I'd built my company by studying people, suppliers, contractors, competition. Every man revealed himself through how he handled money. Derek was already naked in that sense. A knock pulled me from my thoughts. Helen stood at the door, holding a paper bag. I made soup, she said. You look like you've forgotten food exists. I smiled, stepping aside. You sound like my late wife. She must have been wise, Helen said, setting the bag down on the counter. You've got that look in your eyes again. What look the one men get before they do something clever and foolish at the same time. I chuckled, but she was right. Can I ask you something, Helen? Of course. Do you believe in justice? She hesitated. I believe in balance. But justice? That's just people trying to even out pain with more pain. What if pain's the only language a man like Derek understands? She studied me. Then, make sure you speak it fluently and survive the conversation. When she left, I stood by the window for a long while, watching the city stretch beneath the noon sun. Helen was kind, grounded, maybe even right. But I'd spent too many years watching men like Derek get away with things. The ones who humiliate others publicly, confident no one will call them out. I used to think dignity meant staying silent. Now, I wasn't so sure. By evening, I'd decided observation wasn't enough. I needed to act. I called Ray one last time. I appreciate your work. That'll be all for now. He sounded cautious. You planning something, Mr. Merrick? Just closure, I said. He grunted. Closure's a nice word for revenge. Be careful. Guys like Hale, they don't go down quietly. I built 7 stores, Ray. I said calm and deliberate. I know how to handle noise. After we hung up, I poured myself a drink, something I hadn't done in months. Just one. Then I opened my browser and searched Prestige Motors Miami ownership. A familiar name appeared, Marcus Webb. Owner. Second-generation businessman, known for discretion and expensive taste. Scrolling through the dealership's site, I found their unsold inventory. BMWs, Bentleys, a few Maseratis, and then one listing stood out like a crown jewel. Rolls-Royce Phantom Series 2, $465,000, 7 months on the floor. 7 months unsold. In the world of luxury cars, that was a blemish, a black mark on reputation. I sat back and smiled faintly. In business, I'd learned one universal truth. Desperation wears good suits. And Marcus Webb, like most owners, would be desperate to move that car. If I could make myself look like a serious buyer, one who wanted privacy, Webb would handle the deal personally. He'd bypass his sales managers, including Derek, to secure the commission. That would put me in the driver's seat, literally and figuratively. I opened a new draft email and began typing, Dear Mr. Webb, my name is Robert Harlan. I'm an independent investor based in Fort Lauderdale. I've been considering the acquisition of an investment-grade luxury vehicle for my private collection, preferably with low mileage appreciation potential. I noticed your listing for the Rolls-Royce Phantom Series 2 and would like to discuss a discreet, immediate cash purchase. Confidentiality appreciated. Regards, Robert Harlan. I read it 3 times, fine-tuning the tone. Not too eager, not too specific. Then I created a new email account under the same alias. Attached a digital business card. I designed myself minimalist, elegant. The kind of thing old money would use. I didn't send it yet. Timing mattered. I'd learned that long ago. The right action at the wrong time still fails. So I saved the draft and turned off the screen. Before bed, I glanced once more at the old photo on my wall, the one from the grand opening of Merrick Hardware 1986. My father's watch gleamed faintly in the lamplight beside it. He used to say, Son, never pick a fight until you already know how you'll win it. Well, Dad, I thought, smiling to myself, I know exactly how. I shut the light and went to bed. But sleep didn't come easy. My mind replayed Derek's smirk at that dinner, the way Lydia's shoulders had slumped like a woman apologizing for existing. Every humiliation I'd swallowed became a brick stacking quietly into a structure I couldn't yet name. Not vengeance, not justice, maybe something in between. Whatever it was, I'd finish building it soon. And when I did, it would stand taller than any house Derek Hale could ever afford. I waited until the next morning, early enough to look deliberate, late enough not to look desperate, before sending that email. By 10 o'clock, The reply came, Mr. Harlan, delighted to assist. I'm Marcus Webb, owner of Prestige Motors Miami. The Phantom Series 2 is available for immediate purchase. I prefer to handle such transactions personally for privacy reasons. Could we meet tomorrow? Exactly as planned. The following day, as I dressed the part. Navy sport coat to khaki trousers, polished loafers. Not flashy old money, quiet. I carried a slim leather portfolio containing a cashier's check for $100,000, my identification, and nothing else. Every prop had purpose. Every fold in the script rehearsed. Prestige Motors sat on US 1 behind a glass facade that gleamed like an altar to material worship. Rows of Bentleys and Lamborghinis shimmered under track, lighting their reflections sliding across the marble floor. The place smelled of leather, espresso, and ambition. A receptionist in a black suit, too, greeted me. Mr. Harlan, Mr. Webb is expecting you. I followed her up a curved staircase to a second-floor office overlooking the showroom through one-way glass. Webb stood as I entered, early 50s, tan sharp, gray suit, smile, calibrated to suggest success without effort. Mr. Harlan, he said, firm handshake. Appreciate your interest, Mr. Webb, I replied, taking the offered seat. I prefer to keep such acquisitions discreet. I'm not in the habit of posing beside what I buy. He chuckled. Understood. The Phantom's been something of a conversation piece for us. Beautiful machine, but too particular a buyer. I slid the envelope across his desk. He opened it, saw the cashier's check, and his posture changed. Real money always straightens a man's spine. I'm prepared to deposit this today, I said, and deliver the balance upon pickup, under a few conditions. He raised an eyebrow. I'm listening. First, the transaction remains between us. No one on your sales floor needs to know my identity until I arrive for delivery. I value privacy. He nodded slowly. Unusual, but doable. Second, I'll collect the car during normal business hours. I want the full showroom experience, just without prior notice. Webb hesitated, curiosity flickering behind his calm. That can be arranged. May I ask why? Because I enjoy seeing how professionals handle surprises. He studied me for a beat, then smiled again, the kind of smile that hides questions behind dollar signs. 4 weeks for detailing and final inspection. Delivery early April. Perfect. We spent the next 40 minutes reviewing forms, initials, signatures. He mentioned the car's history, its bespoke interior, its price. I phoned mild interest, mostly listening to the cadence of his confidence. Through the glass below, I saw Derek on the showroom floor, animated, laughing with a customer. His gestures big, and rehearsed the same ones he'd used at dinner when describing his Porsche. He looked small from up here. As Webb slid the final page toward me, he said, out of curiosity, how did you hear about the dealership? I have a family connection, I replied casually. My daughter's husband works here. Derek Hale. Recognition flickered in his eyes. Ah, yes. One of our managers, fine salesman. So I've heard. I gathered my papers. Let's keep that connection between us. Shall we? Family and finance rarely mix well. Understood, Webb said quietly. When we shook hands, his grip was firm, confident, already imagining his commission. Mine was steady for a different reason. The first piece of the trap was set, and neither man below us knew it. Outside, sunlight bounced off the glass, like a camera flash. I took a deep breath, pocketed the receipt, and walked to my car, parked 2 blocks away. The Camry looked dull beside the luxury vehicles glittering behind me. I liked that. Humility is camouflage. Driving home, I caught my reflection in the side mirror, a 63-year-old man with thinning hair and clear eyes. For the first time in months, I felt something sharp and alive move under my ribs, not joy focus. That night Helen knocked. She brought peach cobbler this time. You look pleased with yourself, she said. I closed a deal today. With the devil, she teased. Something like that, I said, taking a bite. But I made sure to get it in writing. She laughed softly, then grew serious. John, just promise me one thing. Whatever you're doing, make sure it ends with peace, not just punishment. I'm aiming for both, I said. After she left, I poured a cup of tea and reopened my laptop. I updated my log. Observation 7. Contact established with dealership owner. Deposit placed under alias Robert Harlan. Delivery scheduled for early April. Objective: orchestrate public exposure through professional humiliation, not violence. Maintain dignity. I sat back, letting the glow of the screen wash over the quiet apartment. Outside, Miami hummed with traffic, restless and oblivious. Somewhere across town, Derek was bragging to Lydia about a client who just placed a huge order, his voice full of the same arrogance that once filled my dinner table. He didn't know the client's name. He didn't know that his humiliation had already begun. I closed the laptop, turned off the lamp, and stood at the window, city lights flickering like stars caught in glass. My father once told me every man builds a monument to himself, some out of stone, some out of ruin. Tomorrow I'd start building mine. The morning the call came, I was trimming the small potted plants on my balcony, the kind of quiet ritual that gives an old man the illusion of control. My phone buzzed against the metal railing. Mr. Harlan, said a crisp, professional voice. This is Marcus Webb. Your vehicle is ready for collection. When would you like to pick it up? I looked out over the rooftops toward the hazy blue of Biscayne Bay. The air smelled like salt and distance. Within the hour, I said, excellent. We'll be prepared. I hung up and went inside. The morning light cut across my apartment, catching the dust in motion. I laid my clothes on the bed like armor, before battle faded jeans, scuffed work boots, a gray jacket with worn elbows, no watch, no jewelry. Just the version of me Derek Hale believed in, the poor, irrelevant father-in-law. As I buttoned the jacket, I whispered to the mirror, let's end this quietly. The Camry's engine coughed to life. The drive took 30 minutes through traffic, long enough for the gravity of what I was about to do to settle, not heavy, but deliberate. I'd spent months watching, documenting, planning. Now, all I had to do was arrive. Prestige Motors rose from the street like a glass temple. Through the showroom windows, I could see cars positioned under bright spotlights, Bentleys, Aston Martins, the Rolls-Royce Phantom, glimmering black as ink in the center. And there he was, Derek, in a tailored blue suit, mid-pitch, with a couple in designer sunglasses. His hands moved as he spoke, expressive, confident, rehearsed. He didn't notice me at first. I walked through the main entrance, the door chiming softly behind me. The receptionist smiled automatically. Good morning, sir. May I help you? I kept walking. My eyes were on the rolls. When Derek finally saw me, his face froze. Confusion flickered first, then irritation. Then that practiced smirk he used when he wanted to hide insecurity behind arrogance. He excused himself from his clients and strode over, voice low but sharp. What are you doing here, John? I ran my fingers along the Phantom's hood, just admiring craftsmanship. This is a private showroom, he said quickly. You need an appointment. I have one, I said. His eyes narrowed. With who? The janitor. Your boss, I said evenly. He laughed too loud. You think Marcus Webb's gonna waste his time with you? You can't even afford the tires on this thing. Why don't you take your car? And which one? I asked softly. The Camry or the Rolls? He blinked, thrown off balance. Around us, A few salespeople had paused, pretending to tidy displays, but clearly listening. Sir Derek said, voice rising, I'm asking you to leave before security removes you. I'm not leaving. He gestured toward the guard near the entrance. Jason, we have a disturbance here. The guard hesitated, looking uncertainly between us. The room had gone quieter, the couple he'd been helping now, watching openly. I stayed calm. Before you embarrass yourself further, Derek, maybe ask your boss why I'm here. Don't tell me what to do, he snapped. You've been jealous since day one. Look at you driving that old heap, pretending you're still relevant. He stepped closer, voice loud enough for everyone to hear. You can't afford the insurance on this car, much less the down payment. Stop making a scene. That last word hung in the air. Scene. It's funny how humiliation echoes. I remembered him saying something similar months ago, across Lydia's dining table. Only this time he'd built the stage himself. Before I could reply, another voice cut through the silence. Mr. Hale. Marcus Webb stood at the top of the glass staircase, expression unreadable. He descended slowly, his polished shoes clicking against the marble. Every head turned. Sir Derek began quickly. I was just enough, Webb said. He turned to me. Mr. Merrick. My apologies for the disturbance. Your vehicle is ready, and the paperwork is prepared in my office. For a heartbeat, the entire showroom froze. Derek's mouth opened. Vehicle. He repeated, voice strangled. Webb didn't look at him. The Rolls-Royce Phantom Mr. Merrick purchased. Jason, please retrieve the delivery documents. A ripple of whispering moved through the room. Derek's color drained as Webb turned back toward him. You just attempted to remove one of our highest value clients from the showroom. You're terminated effective immediately. Terminated for what? Derek's voice cracked. This is a misunderstanding. He's your father-in-law. Webb finished. Yes. And apparently a better businessman than I realized. The receptionist's phone rang. No one answered. The other salesmen looked down at their shoes. Collect your personal items, Webb said coldly. HR will contact you regarding final paperwork. Leave your badge at the desk. Derek stood, frozen eyes, darting between us, disbelief, collapsing into fury. This isn't over, he said, finally pointing at me. You think this is justice? You just ruined your own family. I met his eyes. No, Derek. I just stopped pretending you were part of it. He stepped forward, jaw clenched, but Webb moved slightly between us. Security will escort you out if necessary, he said. Derek turned, grabbed his briefcase, and walked toward the exit with stiff shoulders. When the door shut behind him, the room exhaled a collective breath they hadn't realized they'd been holding. Webb gestured toward the stairs. Shall we finish the paperwork? Mr. Merrick up in his office. The air felt cooler. Through the one-way glass, I could see Derek outside in the parking lot, pacing beside his car phone, pressed to his ear, shouting into nothing. Webb slid the final contract across his desk. That was unexpected. Predictable, I said. He's been performing for an audience his whole life. Today the lights just went out. Webb didn't reply. He only nodded as I signed, then handed me the key fob, resting in a velvet box. I thanked him and left quietly, descending the stairs, past the murmuring staff, past the gleaming vehicles, until the sunlight hit my face again. The Phantom's door closed with the sound of finality. As I pulled onto the street, the car's interior smelled of new leather and triumph. But as I caught my reflection in the rearview mirror, a tired man with lines carved deep from years of endurance, I realized triumph wasn't the right word. This wasn't victory. It was proof. Proof that dignity still had teeth. I drove home slowly, the hum of the engine like a heartbeat, steadying itself after a long climb. Behind me in the showroom parking lot, Derek Hale stood alone, watching the car vanish down the road, the same car he'd once sworn only real men could afford. The irony was almost poetic. Almost. I didn't plan to answer the phone when it rang that night. I was sitting by the window, the city humming in the distance, a cup of lukewarm tea untouched beside me. But when I saw Lydia's name, I picked up before the second ring. Dad. Her voice was trembling thin as wire. I'm here. What did you do? That question landed soft, but heavy. What did he tell you? I asked. He came home early. Said you showed up at his work. Humiliated him in front of everyone. Said you bought a Rolls-Royce to make him look like a fool. She paused, breath shaky. He lost his job. Dad. He said you planned it. I waited a beat before answering. Come see me tomorrow. 2 o'clock. Cafe in Coconut Grove. I'll show you everything. Why not just tell me now? Because you deserve more than words. You deserve proof. She hesitated. He says you've been spying on him. That you're sick. Obsessed. Then come see if he's right. I said quietly and hung up. The next afternoon, the cafe smelled like roasted beans and rain from a morning storm. I arrived early, sitting with my back to the wall, a habit I'd never lost. The folder sat beside my cup, thick with documents, photos, bank statements. Lydia walked in 7 minutes late, her shoulders tight, her eyes red, from either anger or tears. Maybe both. She didn't hug me, didn't smile, just sat. I need to understand, she said, voice controlled but brittle. You will. I opened the folder and slid the first page toward her. The sale agreement from when I'd sold Merrick Hardware. 2 years ago, I sold my business, 7 stores, net after taxes, $23 million. She stared at the number, as if it were written in another language. You told us you barely had enough for rent. I wanted a simple life, I said. Wanted to see how people treated me when they thought I had nothing. She looked up sharply. That's manipulative. It's revealing, I said. And what it revealed was hard to watch. I handed her another document, photos of her husband with Vanessa Torres. Dinner tables, hotel lobbies, his hand on the small of her back. Lydia's eyes moved across them slowly, her breath catching. How long? 8 months. Her lips pressed together, trembling. You hired someone to follow him. I hired someone to protect you. From a man who's been lying about everything. Next came the bank statements, red lines circling transactions, jewelry stores, hotels, expensive dinners. Then the spreadsheet debts, totaling more than $340,000. He told me we were fine, she whispered, that the bills were handled. He told the bank the same thing I said. They disagree. She leaned back, pressing her palm against her forehead. You should have come to me first. Let me handle it. I tried, I said softly. For 3 years, every dinner, every call, you defended him. I realized words wouldn't free you. Proof would. She looked at me across the table, the kind of look that lives halfway between fury and heartbreak. So you bought a car. I nodded. A tool, not a trophy. To ruin him. To expose him, I said. He ruined himself. She was quiet for a long time, then asked why not just let him fall on his own, because he was taking you and the kids down with him. Her eyes filled again, but she didn't cry. You humiliated him. He humiliated you for years, Lydia. He made you apologize for being loved. He used money to measure worth. I just gave him a mirror. She exhaled shakily, staring at the folder. You played God with our lives. I met her gaze. No. I just stopped pretending God would handle it for me. Outside, a truck rattled down the street, breaking the silence. Inside, her hands trembled as she turned one more photograph over Derek. At a hotel valet, Vanessa's hand on his chest. His wedding ring still on. She closed the folder. I need time. Take it, I said. Just don't let him use it against you. She stood slowly, the chair scraping the tile. He says, you destroyed our family. I think I just showed you who destroyed it, I replied. Lydia hesitated, then whispered, he'll come after you. I smiled faintly. He already tried. That's what cowards do when truth cornered them. As she left, she didn't hug me, didn't look back. But she took the folder with her, and that was enough. When I got home, I found myself pacing. The apartment felt too still, too ordered. I sat at the desk, opened my laptop, and typed into the growing file, Observation 10. Phase 1 complete. Subject exposed. Daughter partially receptive. Emotional resistance expected. Do not retaliate further until next move initiated by subject. My finger hovered over the keyboard. Then I added one more line. Remember, dignity isn't in the revenge. It's in what follows. I saved the file, closed the lid, and poured a glass of water instead of whiskey. Outside, the sky turned the color of steel, the evening settling in like judgment. I didn't know that while I was writing, Derek was already sitting in his car, outside my apartment building, staring at my window phone pressed to his ear. I didn't know that he'd already found out about the private investigator, that he'd spoken to a lawyer, that he'd decided to fight, not with apologies, but with lawsuits. All I knew, looking out into the fading light, was that justice had teeth, and sometimes it bites back. The summons arrived on a Tuesday morning, plain white envelope. Miami-Dade Family Court, printed in small, unfriendly letters at the corner. I already knew what it was before I opened it. Inside, a petition filed by Derek Hale, alleging intentional interference with marital relationship, defamation of character, and financial manipulation, resulting in emotional distress. The irony nearly made me laugh. The man who'd lied, cheated, and drowned his family in debt was now asking a judge to protect his reputation. But then I read the last page. Defendant John Merrick. Relief sought compensatory and punitive damages totaling $200,000. That number didn't sting. What did was the last sentence. Plaintiff asserts that the defendant's deliberate deception has destroyed a stable marriage. I folded the papers neatly, placed them on my desk, and stared out the window. The city looked small from here, little squares of light and motion. For a moment I thought of calling Lydia. Then I stopped myself. She needed space, not more of my gravity pulling her down. Instead, I called Diane Costa, the attorney I'd quietly retained weeks before. She picked up on the first ring. Mr. Merrick. He's suing me, I know. His lawyer's been making noise for days. On what grounds? On desperation, she said. But we'll still treat it seriously. Can you come in this afternoon? Her office sat high above Biscayne Bay, all glass and white walls, sterile, expensive calm. Diane was in her mid-40s, composed, deliberate, the kind of woman who didn't raise her voice because she never had to. She flipped through the papers Derek's attorney had filed. He's playing offense because he's losing ground. Standard tactic. The goal isn't to win, it's to exhaust you. Make you look controlling, vindictive. Force your daughter to waver. She's already wavering, I admitted. Then we stabilize her first, Diane said. And we counterfile. He wants to expose you. Fine. We expose him legally. Adultery, financial misconduct, child neglect. The court loves documents, and you, Mr. Merrick, seem to have plenty. She was right. I had records, photographs, spreadsheets, surveillance logs, the anatomy of a man's downfall cataloged and dated. I signed the retainer renewal and left her office with the same cold calm I used to feel before closing major contracts. Only this time, the product was justice and the market was revenge. 2 weeks later, The hearing convened in Family Court Division 3. The air was thick with perfume, anxiety, and paper. Lydia sat at the plaintiff's table beside Diane, her posture rigid, her hands knotted in her lap. Across the aisle, Derek sat alone beside his attorney, Richard Brenner, a man whose reputation preceded him. Silver-haired, surgically polite, known for shredding witnesses with civility. When the bailiff called the case, the judge, Anwer Marisol Rodriguez, a woman with eyes sharp enough to cut through pretense, took her seat. "Mr. Brenner," she began, "you're representing the plaintiff." "Yes, Your Honor," Brenner said smoothly. "This case involves a father who has deliberately manipulated his daughter's marriage for his own gratification, a calculated act of cruelty disguised as paternal concern." Diane's head turned slightly toward me, a signal to stay silent. Brenner continued, "We will demonstrate that Mr. Merrick used his considerable wealth to orchestrate the loss of my client's employment, spy upon his private life, and bribe his own daughter into divorce. In essence, he weaponized his money to destroy a family." The judge nodded. "You'll have your chance to prove that." Ms. Costa. Diane rose, calm as glass. "Your Honor, we will show evidence of Mr. Hale's adultery, financial deception, and reckless endangerment of his children's welfare. My client acted solely to protect his daughter and grandchildren, not for revenge, but for truth." The judge motioned for them to begin. The next hour was a blur of exhibits and accusations. Brenner painted me as a vindictive old man, resentful of his son-in-law's success, incapable of accepting irrelevance. He showed photos of my Rolls-Royce, calling it the weapon of humiliation. He played security footage from the dealership, me standing calm, while Derek shouted the crowd watching. "Does that look like restraint?" Brenner asked the court. Diane objected. "Counsel is arguing, not questioning." "Sustained," said the judge. When my turn came, Diane called me to the stand. I swore the oath and sat the microphone, amplifying every breath. "Mr. Merrick," she began, "why did you go to Prestige Motors that day?" "To take delivery of a vehicle I purchased," I said simply. "And did you intend to embarrass your son-in-law?" "No. I intended to pick up a car." She handed me a document, Derek's credit report. "What did you discover about his financial situation?" "He had over $300,000 in personal and joint debt, missed mortgage payments, secret loans. He was hiding this from my daughter." Brenner jumped up. "Objection, hearsay." "Overruled," said the judge. "He's referring to documented evidence." Diane showed the affair photographs next. The courtroom murmured. Lydia closed her eyes. Derek stared at the table. "This evidence," Diane said, "was obtained legally through a licensed investigator. Do you deny hiring him?" "Mr. Merrick." "No," I said. "I hired him because I wanted facts, not gossip, not suspicion proof." "Why didn't you confront your daughter sooner?" "Because love makes people blind," I said. "And because she needed to see for herself." The judge watched me closely. "Mr. Merrick, did you at any point physically threaten or financially coerce your son-in-law?" "No, Your Honor. I bought a car. The consequences were his own." When Diane rested, Brenner rose, pacing slowly. "You speak like a man of reason, Mr. Merrick," he said. "But reason doesn't explain obsession. You paid private investigators, attorneys, even bought a luxury car, all to destroy one man. Tell me, does that sound like love?" I met his gaze. "No. It sounds like accountability." The courtroom was silent for 3 heartbeats. Brenner smiled faintly. "And if your daughter hadn't believed you, then I'd have lost her," I said. "But she'd still be free of him. That would have been enough." By the time the hearing adjourned, the judge looked exhausted but thoughtful. "I'll review the exhibits and issue a written decision," she said. "In the meantime, I strongly advise both parties to avoid direct contact. Outside the courtroom, reporters lingered not for us, but for the high-profile divorce hearing next door. Still, the fluorescent hallway felt like a battlefield after smoke. Lydia stood by the elevator, arms folded, eyes red. "He looked broken," she said quietly. "He looked exposed," I corrected. She turned to me, a mixture of gratitude and fatigue in her voice. "I don't know if I can keep doing this, Dad." "You can," I said, "because you have to." She nodded faintly, then stepped into the elevator. I watched the doors close. When they reopened 2 floors down, I saw Derek through the gap, his lawyer beside him, his face pale, his eyes locked on me until the doors slid shut again. There was no shouting this time, just silence thick enough to carry every word he didn't say. That night I wrote in my log, Observation 12. The law moves slowly, but so does rot. The difference is rot hides. The law shines light. And beneath it, when you burn corruption, smoke still clings to you. Remember to open the windows. I closed the notebook. Outside, the wind carried the sound of distant thunder over the bay. The storm was moving in, but so finally was the change. The courthouse smelled of disinfectant and exhaustion, the kind of air that's been recycled through too many disappointments. I sat at the same table as before, hands folded, watching the second hand of the courtroom clock tick its small circle of eternity. Beside me, Diane Costa reviewed her notes calmly. Across the aisle, Derek Hale sat alone. No lawyer this time. Brenner had withdrawn 2 weeks ago, after irreconcilable disagreements. Translation: the client had run out of money. His suit hung looser than before his face, gaunt, the charm stripped away. He wasn't the man who used to sneer across dinner tables or boast about horsepower. He looked like someone who'd driven his pride until it ran out of gas. The bailiff called the case, Hale versus Merrick. Judge Rodriguez entered her robe, crisp, her patience visibly thin. "Mr. Hale," she began, "you've filed for damages exceeding $1 million. Do you have new evidence to present?" He cleared his throat, voice hoarse. "Your Honor, this man destroyed my life. He manipulated my wife, made me look like a monster. Do you have evidence, Mr. Hale?" His hands trembled as he lifted a crumpled page. "He hired investigators. He spied on me." "Within legal boundaries," the judge said dryly, flipping through her papers. "Your infidelity debts and concealed loans are well documented. Do you deny any of that?" Silence. When he finally spoke, it wasn't to deny, it was to deflect. "He wanted me gone so he could control my family. He bought that car just to humiliate me." The judge leaned back, eyes sharp as glass. "Mr. Hale, humiliation is not a tort recognized under Florida law, especially when self-inflicted." The courtroom rippled with restrained laughter that she silenced instantly. Then she turned to Diane. "Ms. Costa, any final remarks?" Diane rose, her tone steady, almost surgical. "Your Honor, the facts remain simple. Mr. Hale's lawsuit is not about defamation or interference. It's about shame, the first honest consequence of his own choices. My client acted within his rights, within the law, and within reason. Justice doesn't bend, because truth hurts." Judge Rodriguez tapped her pen once, twice. "Then, Mr. Hale, your claims are dismissed with prejudice. You will also reimburse Mr. Merrick's legal fees, amount to be determined. Furthermore, evidence from this case will be forwarded to family court for evaluation regarding your visitation privileges." Derek's mouth opened, but no words came. "This hearing is concluded." The gavel came down like a door slamming shut in the past. Outside, the Miami air hit thick and humid, the afternoon sun too bright. I stood on the courthouse steps, watching people move past, attorneys, clients, janitors, all living their small separate stories. Diane touched my shoulder lightly. Congratulations, Mr. Merrick. You're officially free of his nonsense. Free, I repeated, tasting the word. That's one way to put it. She gave me a look that mixed professional satisfaction with something softer. You did what most men your age only talk about. You fought for something that mattered. Don't forget to rest now. She left, and I stayed there feeling the heat rise off the pavement. Across the street, Derek stood near the curb tie, askew, clutching a folder that looked empty. Our eyes met. For the first time in years, he didn't have a smirk, a retort, or even hate sharp enough to throw. Just exhaustion, raw, hollow. He stepped forward, then stopped halfway. You win, I advised, cracking. This wasn't a game, I replied. He nodded slowly, like a man realizing he'd been playing one alone. Then he turned and walked down the block, toward nowhere in particular. I didn't feel triumphant watching him go. There was no music swell, no cinematic glow of victory. Just quiet. Justice isn't fireworks, it's clean up after a fire. That evening I drove the Rolls-Royce home, through light rain. The wipers moved, slow, steady, rhythmic, like breathing. At a stoplight I saw my reflection in the glass. Not the man who'd been humiliated, nor the one who'd orchestrated retribution. Just someone older, lighter, by a burden heavier by its cost. When I got home, the apartment felt too large. I brewed tea, sat by the window again, and waited for the city to dim. At 9:14 my phone buzzed. Lydia. Dad. I'm here. It's over, isn't it? Yes, I said. For him, at least. She exhaled a sound, halfway between relief and grief. The kids are asleep. Ethan's been asking to see you. Sophie drew something for you at school, a picture of you with your car. I laughed softly. That'll get me some looks at the art fair. Her voice grew quieter. You were right. About him. About everything. I just wish it hadn't taken all this. Truth rarely comes cheap, I said. I don't know what I'd have done without you, she whispered. You'd have survived, I said. You always would have. I just cleared the fog. A pause. Then, come by tomorrow. The kids want pancakes. I'll bring the syrup, I said. When the line went silent, I sat there a while watching the rain trace small rivers down the glass. Outside, the world kept moving, indifferent, alive. Inside, something in me finally unclenched. Justice had been served, but dignity, that took longer. It came quietly, like the first clear breath after a storm. I looked at the empty teacup, the faint reflection of an old man in the window. For the first time in years, he didn't look defeated. He just looked done. And that was enough. It's strange, the silence that follows victory. You expect fanfare, celebration, something loud to fill the space where the fight used to live. But what you get instead is quiet. A silence so complete, it forces you to notice your own breathing again. 3 weeks had passed since the verdict. The legal papers were filed, the accounts settled, the attorney thanked and paid. On paper, everything was finished. In real life, it felt more like the first breath, after being underwater too long. Lydia had started working again, office manager, at a pediatric clinic in Coral Gables. She called one evening to tell me, pride slipping through her voice like sunlight through blinds. It's not much, Dad, but it's mine. It's more than that, I said. It's a start. The truth was, I hadn't seen her sound like that in years, not since before Derek's shadow stretched across her life. I could hear the clinking of dishes behind her, Sophie humming something in the background, Ethan asking about homework. Ordinary sounds, beautiful ones. Come by Sunday, Lydia said. We'll have dinner. Just the 4 of us. Sunday came with Florida humidity, heavy as wet cloth. I brought a basket of groceries. Old habits die hard. Lydia rolled her eyes when she saw it. Dad, you don't have to bring food every time. I know, I said, setting it on the counter. But I like being needed. She smiled, that kind of smile that's small but sincere. You're needed, just differently now. The kids came running from the hallway. Sophie threw her arms around my waist. Ethan hung back a little, then hugged me too. You brought the car? Sophie asked, eyes bright. It's parked out front. Can we sit in it again? After dinner, I promised. The table was set, simply roasted chicken, mashed potato salad, with too much dressing. It smelled like a home that had remembered itself. We ate, we laughed, and for the first time nobody mentioned the past. No lawyers, no debts, no Derek. Just us. Halfway through the meal, Lydia said, I repainted the living room. I noticed, I said. Looks brighter. I did it myself. Kids helped. Good, I said. A family that paints together. Argues about color together? She finished laughing, her laughter that was new. It had been missing so long, I'd almost forgotten what it sounded like. After dinner, we sat on the porch. The air was thick with the smell of rain and cut grass. Sophie leaned against me holding her sketchbook. She flipped it open to show a new drawing, our family. 4 figures, her, Ethan, her mother, and me. No Derek. I didn't know what to draw for Grandpa's car, she said. So I just made it silver and shiny. It's perfect, I told her. When they went to bed, Lydia brought 2 cups of coffee and sat beside me. The porch light buzzed softly. I've been thinking a lot about forgiveness, she said quietly. Do you ever regret how far it went? I looked out into the dark yard, cicadas, singing somewhere unseen. Sometimes, I admitted, but not for what I did, for what it cost. She nodded slowly. I used to think strength meant holding on to people, to marriage, to pride. But maybe it's knowing when to let go. You learned that the hard way, I said. So did you. We sat in silence for a while, drinking coffee that went cold without either of us caring. I'm happy, Dad, she said finally. I don't think I've said that in a long time. I know, I said. I can hear it. When I left that night, the kids had drawn little chalk hearts on the driveway, the kind that wash away after rain. Still, they made the ground look softer. Back at my apartment, I rearranged the living room, not out of boredom, but because it felt like time. I replaced the photo of my old hardware store with one Lydia had given me last Christmas. Me, her, and the kids, standing in front of a modest tree, all smiling. It wasn't a portrait of wealth or revenge or victory. It was something quieter, survival maybe. Dignity definitely. I opened my notebook, the one I'd filled through months of chaos. On the last page, I wrote observation 14, after justice rebuild, slowly, kindly, without needing applause. Revenge ends when peace no longer feels foreign. I closed the notebook, slid it into the drawer with my father's old watch, and turned off the light. For the first time in a long time, I didn't dream about Derek. I dreamed about Sunday dinners and laughter that didn't hide behind fear. The kind of peace only age and endurance can earn. The older I get, the more mornings feel like borrowed time. The sun rises slower, but when it does, it fills the room with a kind of light that doesn't ask for attention. It just exists, quiet, earned. 6 months had passed since the court case closed, since Derek's name stopped echoing through our lives. Lydia had built a new rhythm, work, school runs, weekend hikes with the kids. She laughed easily now, the kind of laughter that didn't check for permission first. As for me, I'd started to think about after. Not in the morbid sense, just the practical one. You don't reach 70 without realizing you can't take anything with you, except how you leave people behind. The Thursday morning, I met with attorney Diane Costa. One last time. Her office window framed the bay, same as before, only brighter now. I want to update my will, I told her. She nodded. I thought you might. The trust for your grandchildren is already airtight, I know. But I want to make things simpler. Clean lines. No room for confusion. We spent an hour going over everything. Lydia would inherit the house I'd bought quietly in her name, free of mortgage or debt. The kids' education fund, $500,000, was untouched, still growing. The remainder of my assets, investments, and what I didn't need for comfort would go into something new. The Merrick Foundation for Dignity in Aging, a small charity designed to help older adults in Miami who'd been abandoned or manipulated by their families. The forgotten ones, the ones like me before all this. When Diane read the mission statement aloud, she looked up and smiled faintly. That's poetic justice. No, I said. Just balance. Before leaving, I handed her a sealed envelope. For Lydia, I said. Only after I'm gone. She nodded. The following Sunday, Lydia and the kids came over. Ethan had grown taller, Sophie louder. She ran straight to the kitchen, already rummaging for snacks. Grandpa, she said, Mom says you used to build stuff. Like real things. I owned hardware stores, I said. Built half my life with a hammer and too much optimism. Can you help me build a treehouse? I can help you plan it, I said. The climbing part's on you. That made her giggle. Later after dinner, Lydia and I sat on the balcony with coffee. The night was warm, crickets filling the pauses between sentences. She said, the kids talk about you all the time at school. Sophie told her teacher you're a superhero. I smiled. That's generous. I'm just old. She said your power is seeing the truth before anyone else does. That one caught me off guard. I looked out at the city lights and said quietly, I used to think seeing truth was a curse. Turns out, it's the beginning of healing. She reached over, squeezed my hand. You gave me back my life, Dad. No, I said. You took it back. I just turned on the light so you could see the door. We sat like that a while. No words, just breathing the same air. The kind of silence families earn through pain and forgiveness. When they left, Sophie drew a heart on my apartment whiteboard. Inside it, she wrote in messy letters, Love you, Grandpa, forever. Weeks passed. Autumn crept in slow. The Florida kind, barely visible, but felt in the softer mornings and quieter streets. I spent those mornings walking along the bay, watching the water change color with the light. Sometimes I'd pass couples arguing, sometimes old men fishing alone. I'd nod, they'd nod back, like members of a quiet fraternity that only age can join. One afternoon, I sat on a bench, the water still and silver. A thought came. The world moves on whether you forgive it or not. And for the first time I realized I had. Not just forgiven Derek. Forgiven myself for waiting too long to act, for staying silent too many dinners, for mistaking endurance for love. Forgiveness doesn't erase what happened. It just stops it from owning the rest of you. That night I opened my journal for the last time. The pages were full. Dates, notes, reflections, pieces of a life, rebuilt from rubble. On the final page, I wrote Observation 20, the final entry. I thought revenge would taste sweet. It didn't. It tasted like metal. And smoke, the flavor of things burned down. What came after, though? That was sweet. Watching my daughter laugh again. Hearing my grandchildren call my name. Knowing I left this world a little more decent than I found it. Dignity isn't in wealth or power, or even victory. It's in refusing to become what hurt you. Justice was necessary. Mercy was the lesson. I closed the book and placed it beside my father's old watch. The ticking sounded softer that night, like time was breathing with me, not against me. Tomorrow I'd visit Lydia and the kids again. Sophie wanted to show me her new drawing, the treehouse plans. Ethan was saving for a science fair project. Lydia had invited a few neighbors for dinner. Life, in all its small, forgiving ways, was happening again. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was part of it. The storm had passed. The house still stood. And inside it, laughter. You know, people keep calling what I did revenge. But it wasn't. Revenge is angry. What I did was patient, precise. I didn't destroy him, I just stopped protecting his lies. In the end, I didn't win a battle. I reclaimed my dignity. And when I look at my daughter laughing again, my grandkids running barefoot through the yard, that's all the justice I'll ever need. So if you're watching this, remember, sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't about making someone fall. It's about standing tall again quietly, with peace in your heart. If my story meant something to you, hit like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments, what does justice mean to you? Because I've already found mine.